Welcome to the Back in Time podcast with Kyle and JD, where every week we jump into our DeLorean, cruise to 88 miles per hour, and travel back in time to review our favorite films from all genres and bring you celebrity interviews every single week.
Very good, Lewis. Short but pointless.
Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
You want me to yank you out of that seat and shake it out of you?
I don't have it. Screws fall out all the time. The world's an imperfect place.
And now, here is your host, Kyle Autry, and his co-host, JD. Right, welcome back to the Back in Time podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Autry, joined as always by my co-host, JD. JD, how are you tonight?
Dude, I'm doing pretty freaking fantastic. I'm like a toy in a box tonight with the subject that we've got and the topic that we're going to be talking about. And it's one that's very near and dear to my heart because I still collect action figures and still display them prominently in my TV room, as you know.
Yes, I do. I stole a few. I mean, I looked at a few when I was over there last. And yeah, you've got quite the collection, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But let's bring in the special guest here. So on the show tonight, we are joined by Richard Mayerik. He is one of the producers on the show, The Toys That Made Us. Rich, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Pleasure to talk with you guys, and I'm equally super stoked to nerd out about toys.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And I want to start just a little shout out. We have a mutual friend, Chris, that had put me in contact with you and recommended. He's like, you have to get this guy on your show. He'd be perfect. He totally fits your target demo. So shout out to Chris for hooking it up. But
Thank you, Chris.
So I feel like we have a lot of similarities just kind of growing up in the same town and, 4 or 5 years apart. So I guess I want to start with this. When did you decide you wanted to be involved in the film business? When did that start for you?
Man, it's a pretty long and windy road. So yeah, I grew up in Portage, Indiana. It's Miller Beach actually, and then later on, I think we moved to like Stone, probably around like that. This is all insider Portage nonsense. But yeah, I think I moved closer to downtown Portage when I was like in 6th or 7th grade. But I was always like interested in film and television, but for most of my youth, I considered it kind of like a pie in the sky, sort of like far-fetched. Like, yeah, if all these real adult jobs that I actually want to try and do for a living don't pan out, then I guess I could always move to Los Angeles and work in television or movies and whatnot. But yeah, it was never something that I thought was something that I was going to pursue first and foremost. I actually spent most of my life wanting to be an archaeologist. And that was something that I think I forged that idea in grade school, and I followed it all the way to probably midway through my sophomore year of college. But I was always terribly interested in history and terribly interested in culture. And then that seemed like a perfect fit for me. It was something that I was so sure I was going to end up doing that I never really thought twice about it. And then I kind of hit this weird epiphany about, midway through my sophomore year of college, where I was just like, I will likely be in school for the next decade if I want to do anything of any relevance with this degree. And it was kind of this panic moment because, for the first time in my life, like I had to completely reassess my, my trajectory. And, it kind of evolved from there. Like I had this weird transitional moment where I was just like, maybe I'll be an actor. And I was a theater major for a minute. And then I just was like, this is even more impractical than what anthropology ended up being. And then I was kind of at this crossroads moment. And this was probably right around the time that Tristan was, my friend Tristan, also from Portage, was considering moving out to Los Angeles. And he had gone straight into, film and television. And I decided, you know what, I guess I'll see how things go in Los Angeles, and worst case scenario, I can always move back and work at Walgreens or whatnot. So I moved out there in 2006, and I've been out here ever since. And it's one of those things where, I don't want to say who really is like as accurate as the stereotype goes, but
Sure.
first impressions go a long way, and it's really what you do with that first impression. The first job that I had when I moved to Los Angeles, I was a production assistant on the Hollywood season of Real World, and it was something that I was only supposed to do for about 10 days, and I busted my ass. Can I say ass? Busted my butt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I busted
That's
my
all
ass
you want, man.
And ended up getting to stay on throughout the duration of the show, and everything that I've done since then in this town for the past 13 years can be traced back to that one job and like the people I met, because once you start working long enough in this town, you realize how small it is and how many of the same people that you end up working with on different shows at different production companies and whatnot. So like your reputation really becomes kind of your resume and what you do with the opportunities you have. And I know that kind of sounds probably trite and very kind of like schmaltzy, but it's true. Like it's just
not at all.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just been, and I mean, we'll obviously get into it more with the topic at hand, but yeah, I mean, there was one of those things too, where the longer you work out at something, the more you kind of realize where exactly you want to fine tune it and focus at. Because again, I didn't come out here thinking like, I want to be a DP or I want to be a director, or I want to be a writer. It was just like, this is my Hail Mary to do something that I always thought was unobtainable. Let's see what I can do with this. So I wore several hats starting out. I was production assistant, an assistant camera op, a story producer, a production coordinator. And like each time I worked on something in a different capacity, I was able to take something from that and kind of realign it to what I actually wanted to do. And eventually here I am ending up in what I still think is probably some sort of simulation or dream, because I didn't think I'd ever get paid to, work on shows about toys, which is something that I've loved since I was a kid. So there's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah. And I think it's worth like noting, and we've talked about this on the podcast before when I've talked about my hometown. I've always said there's three things that happen when you come from Portage. Like, one, you stay in Portage your whole life. Two, you move out, you never come back. Or three, you work at the steel mill. Sure. Like, would you agree or disagree?
I mean, here's the thing is it's generally, like, and I don't want to name anyone specifically, but there's definitely this kind of mentality sometimes with Portage in the region that, people who are able to get out have nothing but, derogatory things to say about it. And I think who I am is still fundamentally forged in that region. And I'm always someone who looks forward to going back and seeing friends and family. It's nothing I ever kind of like do begrudgingly. I do think obviously like for something like what I ended up doing, it does require you to leave, but I still feel like who I am is very much tied into the city that I grew up in. But I think opportunities are limited when it comes to pursuing something creative or pursuing something that isn't, the jobs that you mentioned. So it's weird. It's a very kind of like bittersweet sort of opinion on our hometown. But I mean, I wouldn't regret anything about it, because I feel like, so much of who I am is still because of where I came from. And I think also in a way, again, to err on the side of being schmaltzy, I think growing up in a place like Portage and coming out to a city like Los Angeles, having that background kind of keeps you a little more humbled and grounded and kind of reminds you of your roots a bit. So I've never really had to worry about going off the rails too much and falling into some sort of stereotypical Los Angeles lifestyle that's going to lead to my demise.
Right. Yeah. No, all my family is still, not like I went far. I went to Fort Wayne, Indiana. So, I mean, I'm still a 2-hour drive anytime I want to go home.
Sure.
And my family owns a pizza restaurant. We always jokingly say it's sponsored by BAM Pizza. Although
BAM Pizza?
They don't. Yes.
Are you kidding me? All right. So a sidebar, and I this is incredible. So over the last couple times I've come home to visit, my sister, who's an interior designer who lives in Northwest Indiana, she's just like, you got to try this pizza place out. It just opened. It's called BAM Pizza. And I was like, yeah, I'll try it out. I mean, I want to get because I have this like holy trinity of things that I need to, swing by and eat whenever I come home. And
I definitely want to hear those.
I need a White Castle. I need to go to Gelsosimo's Pizza.
Yep.
And then there's this church that my aunt and uncle grew up in, and they had this pierogi fest, but it's never open when I'm there, and it's really frustrating. But Gelsosimo's has been like my benchmark for pizza for a long time, because there's nothing else in LA like it. LA's pizza scene is kind of weak. But yeah, she's just like, you got to try this BAM Pizza place. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. And it was phenomenal. Like, it's now my favorite pizza in Portage. So kudos, because that place is great.
Well, yeah, I will pass that along to my sister, who I asked her if she knew you and showed her a photo, and she's like, I swear that guy's been in here. So there you go.
Pick up the pizza the last time I was home. So there you go. My stamp of approval for sure.
There we go. Well, yeah. So when you go, like, how often do you get back home?
Not as much as I'd like. It's weird because, like, and this is the thing that I think would be difficult too. Is like my mom and dad, my sister, and some close friends I still have are still in Portage in Northwest Indiana. A couple of them in Valpo, and like if it was like my parents have always been, when I first told them that I was moving to Los Angeles, they didn't believe me, and I don't think they believed me for almost the next 3 months before. Well, I was preparing to move, and I think it wasn't until like a week before I drove out that they were just like, oh my God, he's serious. He's really leaving. But they were super encouraging and supportive. And, as much as I'm sure, it pains them to have me 2,000 miles away and vice versa, I think they kind of also understood what you were talking about, that in order to kind of pursue what I wanted, it kind of required me to do so. And so I try and come home at least. I always come home for the holidays. And then there's always a few other visits peppered throughout the year that I try and squirrel away to catch up. And lately, when we do conventions and stuff in the Midwest, it kind of gives me a built-in opportunity to swing by and see them too. So that's always a bonus. But yeah, usually a few times a year, I'll try and come back for about 4 or 5 days and, hike through the dunes and just surround myself with hometown goodness.
little 219 action.
Yeah.
I love it. So you mentioned some conventions. Like, which ones have you done in the area?
So we did last year, Brian and I, and we did a Star Wars Celebration panel at Celebration in Chicago this past year, which was it this past year or was it the year before? No, it had to have been this past year. It was definitely this past year.
It was this past year.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So yeah, Brian and myself and Billy Galaxy, who's a friend of the show and owns a fantastic toy store up in Portland. We did basically a sequel to our Star Wars episode because we had a lot of people who, interestingly enough, were not upset, but curious as to why we didn't spend more time on Power of the Force 2. And to be quite honest, we would. I mean, Brian likes to joke a lot that the first cut of our Star Wars episode was 2 hours long. And I mean, he's probably not that far from the truth. It was a long cut, but you have to kind of measure your audience and figure out what's practical and what's going to lose people midway through. So there's things we had to lose, unfortunately. And we did actually spend some time on Power of the Force 2 before we got it down to what ended up being released. But so we figured we'll use this panel opportunity as a way to kind of dive into Power of the Force 2 in ways that we wanted to in the actual episode. So that's kind of the long and short of that. And it went over really well. But yeah, so that was one of the more recent ones. And I think this year we're definitely, I mean, we would have loved to have done C2E2. Unfortunately, our schedules didn't line up on that, but we're considering possibly doing Wizard World Chicago this year. So yeah. And I think we're going to do Dragon Con too, which is down in Atlanta. But
yeah, I've heard really good things about Dragon Con.
Yeah, me too. I've never been, so I'm super stoked to finally check that out. Yeah, so I'm trying to do more panel appearances throughout the country going forward this year with whatever we have on deck.
So that's so cool because I'm in Chicago, so I'm at C2E2 in Wizard World Chicago and Ace every single year. So if you're coming this way, I'm making my way to your panel for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and Dragon Con now, if I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, that's kind of known for like Ghostbusters territory there. They do like a parade and there's like all these ghost heads get together. Are you a fan of the Ghostbusters franchise?
I absolutely love the Ghostbusters. There's a friend of mine, his name is Chad. He does a podcast called Horror Movie Barbecue. And we actually just recorded a podcast late last year talking about Ghostbusters toys. But Ghostbusters is an episode that I would love to do if we are given the opportunity to do more episodes, because I feel like there's so much storytelling potential with that. And, we kind of dabble into it a little bit in the Ghostbusters episode of Movies, where, you know, we talk about how, you know, the Filmation live action Ghostbusters sitcom existed and had the rights to the name. And there was a lot of red tape and back and forth to even use the Ghostbusters name. And they were able to finally license it. And then once the movie became the phenomenon that it was, and they decided to adapt it into an animated series, and then all of that kind of legal mumbo jumbo came back up, and they're just like, oh, but there's the Ghostbusters and the Filmation and the Shaper. And then you had two Ghostbusters cartoons competing for views. One was Saturday morning, one was after school, competing toy lines between Kenner and Shaper. Like there's a lot there that I think would make a fantastic episode. So yeah, that's one I would love to make, because I love those toys.
Yeah. I was going to ask, are you involved in movies as well? Because I didn't see that on IMDb and I didn't want to assume.
No, yeah. I was not on Movies. So I was able to give a tidbit or two, but nothing in any official capacity.
Okay. Yeah, and I really love that show as well. Very cool.
So
and
far,
I was blown away by the Ghostbusters episode, because, I mean, who are you going to call? Ghost chasers? Like
Ghost breakers? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, ghost breakers. Yes. It just doesn't have the ring to it.
Right. And I think we definitely have a lot of potential for that to run for several seasons too, just because, you know, movies, I mean, everyone from any corner of interest has an emotional investment in these kinds of Mount Rushmore type movies that we all kind of grew up watching. And I think what's great about how Movies tackles the subject matter is kind of similar to how we were able to use toys as a way to give designers and artists and creators who otherwise didn't really have a voice or a social presence in these iconic lines. Like, we give them like their opportunity for the credit that they deserve. Like, you know, for Dirty Dancing, I mean, how many people know Kenny Ortega before that episode? And now they realize how fundamentally important he was to what made them so special. And for people who you've never heard of Vestron or whatnot, like these are the kind of nuggets, because we didn't want to just make, you know, special features this series, because, you know, every movie that you buy on DVD has those. Like, we had to find a way to make this, you know, warrant its existence and make it interesting for people. And so I think that was successful in that regard.
So where do you begin on the research process of something like that, where you're thinking we're going beyond just what the average person can Google or search or type into their Bing or their Yahoo?
Right.
Where do you even begin that process?
So this is kind of how, and I don't know if this is just a fortuitous coincidence, but I like to say that I was able to actually become, you know, an anthropologist of sorts, just like a pop culture anthropologist or archaeologist, because like half of what makes these shows as special as they are, in my opinion, is the amount of just digging and research and excavation of all of these nuggets. And so it's a very in-depth process. Like, when we start a season of toys, we'll generally have about probably 10 to 15 different options, you know, like potential lines that we want to dive into. And we're going to spend some time now really digging into who's around, who worked on these lines, and it's really detective work. It's like you find it's just like tracing one point of contact to another. So we have an established, now, you know, having worked through 3 seasons, we have a pretty established base of connections from people throughout the toy world. And one of the cool things that I think I really enjoy about having 3 seasons of toys now is if you watch it all sequentially, it kind of works sort of like an MCU, or like an interconnected universe, where you start seeing, you know, people show up more than once, and you see how this toy line kind of tied into this toy line, and how it's kind of all one big picture of an industry from a certain era in time. And so having all of those people who might know someone who knew someone is helpful. And when you want to try and figure out, like, okay, so if we want to do this toy line, who do we need to talk to? Who is in development? Who is in R&D? You know, who is a designer and whatnot? And so a lot of the first stage in doing these shows is just really kind of getting out the phones and calling people and talking to them and having, you know, pre-interviews and just seeing who's around and who knows what. And what, more importantly, like, what is going to be a good story? Because you don't want to keep telling the same story over and over again too, because I mean, there's probably a very general cut and paste story you can tell for any toy line, but it's just like, it's finding those stories within the stories and finding what made this particular toy line unique and like what makes this story worth telling. Because I mean, there's a lot of times where people are saying, we really want you to do, and just as an example, like we want you to do Silverhawks or Thundercats or something like that, or Mask, and it's just like, yes, those are all obviously like very iconic toy lines in their own right, maybe not to the degree of G.I. Joe or He-Man, but still, they had this moment in time. But at the same time, like if there's not anything else behind that toy line, if it's just like this toy line existed and these things came out and it ran from this time to this time and that's it, then we don't really have a story. So it's finding the story and then finding which way you want to take it. So that's a big chunk of the research process and that changes too. Like we definitely had a couple episodes where we thought we were going to tell one story. And then in doing some of these interviews and talking to people, we realized, oh my goodness, like, did you know? I didn't know that. Like the story kind of takes like a U-turn or a veered left. And we realized like, this is far more fascinating. So like, maybe we'll concentrate on this instead. And so it's a very organic process, but yeah, I mean, it really, a lot of that research process really determines what's going to be the best toy line to choose. And, what has the cultural currency, what's going to, because Brian always has this kind of like these pillars that he tries to stick to as much as possible when we're doing these shows. And like one of them has to be like this toy line has remained in some form of the public conscience for, an extended amount of time. It wasn't just kind of this one hit wonder that came and went and disappeared. And the other thing too, is it kind of has to have like I said, something that's interesting behind it other than just a toy that people bought. So there's a few things we try and stick to, and it makes it difficult, but I think at the end of the day, it also gives you an episode that's going to appeal to the most people.
So what you're saying is we're not going to get an episode on the Tick anytime soon?
Maybe in season like 23, we can do the Tick. That would be great. Because I do love that show and those toys.
And I've got a handful of those action figures in my closet right now too. So I enjoy everything that you're saying, especially in the episode for TMNT that you connected it back to He-Man, which I thought was so awesome and powerful to be like, it's a small world, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, with Mark Taylor. I mean, like there are these characters who were so vitally important to more than one toy line and just kind of like shaped the culture of, because I feel like the 70s and 80s in particular were such this weird magical time where it felt like anything can go, like any sort of idea that was as far-fetched and bizarre and unprecedented as possible had an opportunity. And I don't want to sound like the crotchety old guy shaking my fist on the porch, because I buy plenty of modern toys these days, and I feel like right now it's almost a new golden era of toy collecting with the amazing stuff that Super 7 and NECA and even like Mattel and Hasbro are doing. Like I don't want to disparage anything that's happening now, because Lord knows my wallet says otherwise. But I feel like there's also kind of this sense that in order for something to really take off, it needs to be tied into a license of some kind, or something that's familiar to a wide audience. And I think when you look back into the 70s and 80s, I mean, some of the stuff that I remember playing with the most, that I had the most, special memories playing with, are the weird, obscure shit that like my aunts and uncles would get me from like the drugstore, like Starriers or Rocks and Bugs and Things and stuff like that, like Crystar, toy lines that weren't on the same pegs as He-Man. Yeah, exactly. but these were, I mean, like you think about something like Manglers or I don't know, like Breath Blasters, or these weird Mad Balls, like they're things that probably as a unique original idea would have a tough time surviving on toy pegs these days, because it's tough to compete with DC and Marvel and Fortnite. So I love that era just because it gave us so much interesting stuff that came out of just the imaginations of people who needed to capture a kid's attention without necessarily a giant multimedia property behind it right away.
Geez, I had more Bucky O'Hare than Turtles toys for sure.
Yeah, those are great.
I love Bucky O'Hare. That had a cartoon backing to it as well, but nowhere near the presence that
Right. And a lot of times with these toy lines, the cartoon and the toys would come out pretty much around the same time. It was kind of like a, planned marketing strategy rather than just like, hey, this movie is doing millions of dollars. Let's make a toy line out of it. So
the Batman toy line, which I have multiple toys sitting in my closet of.
Superheroes is definitely an episode that I feel like if we're fortunate enough to get other seasons, we definitely need to cover. And there's so much ground to cover there too. My favorite toy line of all time is Superpowers. It was the first toy line that I think as a kid that I saw on a shelf and was just like, this is the peak of action figures. It's never going to get any better than this. And in a ways, I kind of feel like it's that there's such a displayability factor with those figures that I feel like it's still tough to beat. And so I would love to do just an episode on Superpowers and Secret Wars, but there's so much to cover. Like they're kind of Batman figures, the Nego superhero figures. It would almost need to be like a two-parter, I think. Well,
especially if you're talking superheroes in general, you have to create a line between DC and then Marvel.
Of course.
And then everything that's Secret Invasion.
Post-Nego, because they existed in the same line for Nego.
Exactly. And everything that all of those were, and then when it went into the original X-Men line, and then the original Avengers line, and Fantastic Four. I'm more of a Marvel partial person, so I've got, like we discussed earlier, I've got a whole wall of all of the originals just hanging up in my movie room. And I collect them like gangbusters. I bought a Havoc, which wasn't an original. That was Hasbro? Or was it Mattel?
I'm sorry, which figure?
The X-Men line, the original X-Men line.
Oh, that was Toy Biz.
Toy Biz.
Yep. So
they released a Havoc figure outside of the mainstream.
Was that a Wizard exclusive, I think?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And so I just recently bought one of those for like $5, and I was like so excited. And I showed Kyle, and Kyle was like,
yeah, I could care less.
The Toy Biz line is interesting in that you can still pick those up at fairly decent prices. I keep waiting for the collector market to finally come around on them. But I feel like, unfortunately, as cool as those toys are, they kind of exist in that weird window of time where guys my age, our age, kind of like first started kind of getting some disposable income in their pockets and realized, oh, all the toys that I grew up playing with as a kid are worth $1 gazillion now. I'm going to start buying toys and not opening them. And every guy our age had the same idea of just like, I'm going to retire off toys now. And everything, the toy industry kind of picked up on that and in turn released every single thing that they ever released under a limited edition logo or super exclusive, whatnot, numbered this, that, or whatever. And it created this whole bubble of just prospector collecting that kind of kills the value of everything in like a 10-year window. And that's why you can go to any convention in the country at any given time. There's going to be a toy vendor who's got an entire stall of Power of the Force 2 figures and everything else, like in Marvel's famous covers and all of these toys that were cool in their own right. But I mean, everyone has them and they're all in box and no one can move them like for $2. It's crazy.
That's exactly why you can get a fantastic Omega Red character for nothing. And I love it.
Yeah. So if you're into Toy Biz X-Men figures, yeah, the sky's the limit. Scoop them up.
Yeah. I'm kind of going through that now, but with sports cards. I recently got back into that. I'm like, oh my God, I can buy anything I want now. And
I'm curious about that because I had plenty of football and basketball cards up as well. But the dive that those took was very steep and
it was brutal.
And God, I remember my friend Brad and I, for fun back in high school, we would watch Don West. I
love Don West.
It was like something that we would watch with like the same amount of like anticipation and glee as like Saturday Night Live. Like, oh my God, Don West sports cards collecting shows on. And we just laugh our asses off because of just the absolute absurdity of like Don West doing like snow angels of baseball cards and just ripping things open with like frothing spittle in his mouth. It was just a sight to behold. I think I spent like a day like years ago finding every Don West clip that I could find on YouTube and just downloading them all just so I would have them to watch. Cause I was like, these are all going to go away someday and I need to have these. and they still put up. They're still entertaining.
If our listeners do not know what we're talking about, go on YouTube. It's a rabbit hole you will not regret going down. I promise you this. And watch him do snow angels while also rolling over and going, another Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. That's 3 I pulled out of here, guys. I'm going to throw these in
that
on
Kyle
the
is doing
box.
is doing Don a service. It was probably ramped up to like 15 on a scale of 1 to 10.
I will tell you, I had the privilege of seeing it in person. He used to work for TNA Wrestling, and I went to a local show. And beforehand, he gets in front of everybody, and he's like, "I've got these brown bag specials I'm giving out. They're $20." He goes, "I'm gonna throw in 4 DVDs. I'm gonna throw in a T-shirt." I swear to God, I ran to the ATM machine. I sprinted to the ATM machine to make sure I didn't miss out. He probably had thousands, but he made it sound like he had 20. And I was like, I got to get one. I'm just running my little chubby butt as fast as I can.
The thing about Don is he would turn around and with the same energy and passion hawk Beanie Babies like an hour later. So the same volume and energy of him trying to get you to buy a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, he would then turn around and implore you that you need to buy this Princess Diana bear because you're never going to have the opportunity again. And it's going to be, worth a small fortune in 10 years.
Not to toot our Midwest horn, but also a Midwest guy. I don't know if you knew that.
Very much. I mean, wears it on his sleeve.
Yeah. So that's cool that so that's kind of how I reconnected with our mutual buddy Chris. Is we started going to like shows. Mm-hmm. We went to like the Chicago baseball card show, which was massive, and that hobby's actually on the way back up.
That's
crazy.
There
were little kids all over the place spending way more money than me, and I was so impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be huge in like 5 more years.
Can't wait to sell my Sammy Sosas.
And it's really sad that this happened, but Kobe Bryant passed away a couple of days ago, and this will come out probably like a week from now. But unknowingly, I had 2 Kobe Bryant cards on my eBay that I was selling that I had been trying to sell for months and months and months, and all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, what is going on? And I look, and it's my eBay notifications, and my 99-cent card I was selling went to $26.
Wow.
And I was like, and then another one went to 16. I was like, oh my gosh, like this all ended the night that it actually happened. Like, and I had no idea. So, I mean, I wasn't mad about collecting $42. So
the lesson is you just got to stick with it long enough and it'll come back around.
There you go.
R.I.P.
Yeah. Everybody, go ahead and throw away your collection so mine go up in value. That'd be awesome. Which we actually had a guy on that did a documentary on Netflix called, JD, help me out. Jack of all trades. And that was the recommendation of his dad, who was big in the baseball industry. He's like, well, if everybody would just light their collection on fire, they'd be right back where they need to be.
Sure. I mean, that's always going to be one of the main factors. Is just like how prevalent is this stuff out there?
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to come back around to. To your point is when everybody's collecting the same thing and everybody still has them, the value really isn't there. Right,
and that's why we get some questions sometimes. Like I know when we did our San Diego Comic-Con panel last year, one of the Q&A people who came up, asked what a good toy line recommendation would be to start collecting that would see increased value later on. And I answered as polite as possible because that kind of, I mean, like, I feel like it irks me to have that mentality of just like, I'm only collecting because I want to try and flip this later and, buy a house or a boat or whatnot. You should collect what you want to collect because you love it and you enjoy the aesthetics and you enjoy the craftsmanship or you enjoy the property. You should never collect anything with the intent that this is going to get me rich one day, because you're just going to end up, eating your shirt. And I think these days, like, there's still that mentality of just like, oh, this limited edition, this, that, or whatever from, either be it Mattel or Hasbro or NECA or Bandai, like these are all going to be worth a lot. Like it's it's like history repeating itself, where it's
Doubtful.
Guys, come on, it's not the case. But I mean, like, you don't need to have that reason to collect these things. Like, I just put up an entire wall of my office over here with all my reaction figures that I keep carded because I just love the card art that Super 7 does on those figures, like Brian Flynn's background and like graphic design. And that just shows so much with all the cool stuff that they do on those cards. And it's just like, buy this stuff because it's amazing, because like the sculptors at NECA are killing it right now. And that the properties that Super 7's able to grab are just, mind boggling. Like, there are so many other reasons to collect right now toys that you don't need to worry about, whether or not you're going to make a buck off of it down the line.
So what you're saying is my U.S. Agent action figure is going to be explosive before the Falcon and Winter Soldier show comes out.
That's exactly what I'm saying. If you need to flip it, do it now.
Do it now.
There's still some.
I got issue number 1 of him as well. So
short sales only, I guess.
Yeah, I was really upset my mom sold my Ghostbusters collection growing up, because I wanted that back really bad. And when I got out of college, I was like, okay, so where would my toys be in the attic? She's like, hold on, what toys? I'm like, Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, Batman, like, where's all my stuff at? She's like, I sold that in the garage sale years ago. And I was like, huh? You did what?
So did she tell you this was happening? Because this is a story that I've heard so often. It's weirdly prevalent that, like, yeah, cats just go off to school or, move out for work. And then the next thing you know, like, their entire childhood collection is just gone for a quarter at the garage sale, like a month later. It's just like, what is happening here? Like, there needs to be a line of communication about this stuff before it just hits the front yard. Yeah.
So I've been really keeping an eye on my son's toys so that doesn't happen on the next generation of Autry collectors. But yeah, in some of the Ghostbuster stuff is like, not that I would have sold it, but I mean, it is pretty pricey to get like original Firehouse or the original Kenner Proton Pack with the little Nerf streamer.
Absolutely. I mean,
which we all had.
Yeah, we all had. Oh yeah.
No, that line has definitely held its value over the years a lot, because I guess, again, it's just it's a property that really resonated with so many people, and it's just timeless. And I mean, we've got another one on deck as we speak, so it's something that's never really gone away. And I feel like even outside of just the like the movies, like the animated series really did some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I think like the Ghostbusters Extreme, I think maybe a lot of people kind of wrote that off, but there's some really good storytelling in that episode, in that series. And then the comics that IDW has been doing have been phenomenal too. There's this really great crossover run that they did a while back where it brought in the animated series Ghostbusters and the movie Ghostbusters. And it's just, like there's a lot of cool stuff out there if you're a fan of that franchise.
I do want to get your opinion on that. What did you think of the trailer?
I'm really stoked. I honestly think it's going to be a ton of fun. I cannot wait.
Booer and CU Burr both.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, JD was not excited about it. I was beyond excited. Now, I did listen to a podcast with Finn Wolfhard on Kevin Smith's Smodcast, and he asked him, what is the trailer a representation of the film? He's like, that trailer was like a couple scenes of the movie. He goes, that doesn't give away any of the big stuff at all.
Right. And I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I feel like there needs to be more of that. I know Tris and I are constantly venting about how so often trailers are essentially just like chronologically cut shorts of the movie that you're about to see. And it's just like, well, I can tell that I pretty much just saw the beginning, middle, and end of this movie with all the major plot points like just laid out in front of me. And then the other thing that I don't remember ever happening as much when we were kids is I don't remember there ever being 4 or 5 different trailers released before a movie's actually released. Like, I have to cut myself off after the first one these days because like they just keep getting more and more like spoilery as the movie gets closer.
They're invasive.
Yeah, it's insane. It's just like, who needs to know everything about this movie before they go see it? What happened to just, the sense of anticipation and wonder? It's crazy.
Honestly, and I don't know what your feelings are, I don't want to see another Ghostbusters trailer. I think what we saw was good enough.
Exactly. Keep it as ambiguous as possible. I want to see a bunch of stuff out of context. I don't need to have it all tied together for me. I guess it's just like this mentality maybe with studios where they're just like, well, if people don't know exactly what we're doing ahead of time, they're not going to go see this movie, which I feel is probably doing the audience a disservice.
From like a screenwriting standpoint and a filmmaking standpoint, which I'm sure you can agree with, is that this is like the apex of them essentially belittling the process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's not trusting it's not trusting your work enough to connect with the audience.
Frustrating. Like, and even so, like there's been some murmurs about, I don't want to spoil anything, but a certain actor has been rumored to be guaranteed to return in the Ghostbusters movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I wish I didn't see that.
Yeah, because then now you're going to spend the first however long it is in that movie waiting for that to happen rather than just letting it play out organically.
Same.
That's so true.
Exactly the same as with Zombieland 2. Don't look into this too much, audience. Or do. But
right.
Once I found out a certain actor was in Zombieland 2, I was kind of like, oh, I wish that wasn't spoiled for me.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, JD, out of curiosity, was that certain actor from Zombieland 2 also the one that you're referring to in Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Was I not obvious enough for you, Kyle?
I'm just
Does your Indiana education need a little bit punching up?
Easy now.
Oh, I got 2 Indiana boys on the phone. Yes, I am. Much love.
Okay.
Who's your pride?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we typically we'll dive into movies a lot more. We love the interviews and stuff. These are really fun to kind of get away from our normal show. But yeah, we typically what we do on here, Rich, is we'll watch a movie. We'll actually watch the trailer first, which is what we call our teaser trailer breakdown. We'll kind of dissect that, and then we'll go through the movie like scene by scene.
Nice. Which
is kind of fun, and we'll play like clips and stuff. So,
what is your guys' favorite trailer? If you had to pick a trailer from the entirety of your existence, what would it be? What was the one that you can always go back to and be like, I've seen this movie 100 times, and this trailer still gives me goosebumps?
Ooh,
wow. Do you have an answer, Kyle? I've got 2 answers.
Yeah, you go first. Give me a second to think.
I'm going to say the first, Pulp Fiction.
That's a good one.
I love every little inch about that trailer and love the movie. The second is going to be a little bit more off the beaten path, and I'm going to say Leprechaun.
Leprechaun? Really?
Yeah, I love that trailer. We have not reviewed it in full on the podcast yet, but it just encompasses everything about the 1990s, a leprechaun, a horror movie, and of course we've got our leading lady who shines like beyond no one's business.
I'm going to have to go back and watch this Leprechaun trailer because I know I've seen it, but I don't remember it. So now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, for me, that punches the numbers.
Mine is
go Rich.
Cliffhanger. The trailer for Cliffhanger could work as its own standalone short. It is so good. It's that perfect of a trailer. So anyone out there who hasn't seen this trailer yet, I implore that you go watch it because and I love Cliffhanger. I've seen this movie 100 times and I could probably quote it from start to finish.
Good man.
But it makes this movie look like the most epic action movie ever made. There's no dialogue. It uses Mozart's Requiem. Everything that you're seeing is out of context enough, but it hits every sense. Like I can watch this trailer. I can pull it up right now and watch it, and I'll still be like, holy shit, when does this movie come out? Because I need to see it right away. It's that great. So, yeah.
Do you like John Lithgow better than he is in the trailer or the video game?
Oh, that's a good question. So John Lithgow in Cliffhanger is at his like scenery chewing villainy best. So I might have to lean a little bit towards the movie just because he really kind of just runs with that role and knows like the perfect amount of camp and over the topness. So yeah,
it matches Sly so well.
It does. It really does. think the other one might be Batman, because I remember that trailer.
Batman's fantastic.
My childhood mind, because again, there was such a build up to that being released too, and that was before the internet, so there was no real, like, it was just like you needed to be in front of your TV, and at this time, if you were going to watch this trailer, and then it was all any of us talked about for like the next week at school. So
yeah, the schoolyard effect.
Yeah.
Schoolyard effect. It is a thing. I'll tell you probably my least favorite one, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago on the podcast. The original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trailer.
Oh,
with the different voice actors. Oh, it's brutal. It's so bad. But yeah, I was kind of going through some of the ones that we've done, and yeah, one that definitely sticks out for me. It's one of our favorite movies that we've covered on the podcast, but the original Terminator trailer was fantastic. I really like that one a lot. And then, gosh, I'm trying to think of the other one that we had such a good reaction to, but
it's Cool Runnings. It's obviously Cool Runnings.
Cool Runnings was all right.
That's a good no. Cool Runnings is a good fucking trailer.
No, you know what? No, I got it now. It's The Burbs. The Burbs trailer is fantastic.
Burbs is just a fantastic movie all around.
Bro, yes, agreed. Joe Dante
at his best. Well, Gremlins is pretty great too, but if I had to only pick one, I might pick Burbs over Gremlins, which is probably controversial, but
my man, in my opinion, The Burbs is one of the perfect movies ever created.
Yeah. Infinitely rewatchable.
So much.
Yeah. Yep, 100% agree. So we've talked about the toys that made us. I know we can't get into anything else as far as like future episodes and seasons, but one thing that you were telling us about before you got started was you're in production with $7 Productions, which is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's company. Tell our audience a little bit about that project, because that sounded really cool for anybody that's into like Disney and the rides and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it'll be a Disney Plus original series. It's called Behind the Attraction, and it'll be out. I think we're still slated for later this year. That could obviously change, but it basically takes kind of our whole pop history, archaeology take that we do for toys and movies, and we use that as a lens to explore all of the groundbreaking technological and artistic and cultural impact behind the most iconic Disney attractions. So whether it's Small World or Haunted Mansion or Space Mountain or the Matterhorn or Epcot, these are things that we're working hand in hand with Disney on, with Imagineers who are still around. So it's going to be a fantastic show that I think everyone should look forward to eagerly.
Well, is the premise to kind of focus on one attraction for each episode, or to kind of lump them into one?
So each episode will kind of have its own theme to it.
Love that
ties everything together. Yeah.
Because they've done Imagineering, which comes out like every week now, and that kind of glances over it a little bit. I love that series, to be honest, but I would love a deep dive into Space Mountain, which, by the way, out of all the rides, probably the one that holds up the best in my opinion, having recently gone to Disney.
Did you get the chance to go through anything in Galaxy's Edge?
I did.
What did you think?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So the one, was it Loggers Run? Jeez,
Smuggler's Run?
There we go. Smuggler's Run. I'm terrible with names. Just FYI.
Loggers Run. Log Jammer was a ride at Kittyland in Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, you're lucky I didn't call Space Mountain Splash Mountain, which is also a great ride there. But anyway, yeah, that ride is super interactive too. Like, doesn't matter like what seat you have, like you're a part of that ride, which is what I've never been on anything like that.
Yeah, and the Rise of the Resistance, I think the general consensus is it's something that you would wait 5 hours for if you had to, because it's that much of a transcendent immersive experience. So
I'll be there in March, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, I've already warned him, like, you have to get a fast pass for that.
No, it's already booked. Fast pass is booked.
Okay. Well, good man. Okay, well, yeah. So you've got that coming up. Now, I did read on IMDb you're also part of, and this kind of goes along with the name of our show, but it's a new documentary that's going to be coming out next year. I think I was reading, but it's back to
Our future.
back to the culture,
So Back to Our Future. This is a little unfortunate. I guess someone needs to update my IMDb. Back to Our Future was a documentary adaptation of a book by David Sirota that my friend Nate and I attempted to adapt into a feature-length documentary. Oh gosh, almost about 8 years ago, and it was very much a passion project in every sense of the word, because we, in a classic Los Angeles fashion, we're very much really hustling and scraping to get some distribution behind this. And I know at some point we had Adam Goldberg, who was tentatively attached to help us on the back end, but the major brunt of the production work was going to have to fall on our shoulders. So Nate and I were literally, as we were doing, our day jobs, I was working on a couple shows. I think I was on Undercover Boss at the time, maybe. And Nate was working, and we would literally be on our weekends, flying out to New York or Boston to shoot these interviews. And we interviewed Oliver Stone. That one we did here in LA. We flew out to the East Coast. We interviewed Noam Chomsky, Rachel Maddow, Chuck Klosterman, Michael Dukakis, Landon Parvin, who was Reagan's speechwriter. We have on a hard drive to this day, we have these outstanding interviews that we would love to do something with someday. But yeah, unfortunately, the scope of that project just kind of became more than we were able to facilitate at the time, while still trying to work our normal production jobs. So maybe one day Back to Our Future might still see the light of day, but unfortunately right now it is in a classic Hollywood holding pattern.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Well, I thought I'd ask about that.
Same as that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I definitely want to talk about some toys and collecting. I know you're super into that. Is there anything currently that you're really into as far as like a certain franchise or a toy collection?
Well, I do probably spend an inordinate amount of money on Super 7 stuff. Brian Flynn definitely has his laser sights on my interests to a T. But there are some things out there that are just so bonkers that really captured my heart. There's a line by a company called Lennard, which is very much like a throwback to like the 70s and 80s, kind of like a Remco type company that, makes toys that are similar to other more popular toys. But over the last couple of years, they've managed to grab a couple relatively big licenses for movies that really didn't do too much. And I think they made toys for Rampage and something else. But they managed to secure the license from Fox Disney for Alien figures, and they are making these very throwbacky Kenner style Alien figures, and they are just spectacular. And you guys should look them up if you haven't seen them. But they have like the power loader and the personnel carrier vehicle and the Marines and these like very like 5-point articulation aliens, and they're great. They're fantastic. So I'm super stoked about those. Trying to think of what else has really kind of like captured my eye. I know NECA's doing some great stuff. They're Halloween 3 trick-or-treaters that are coming out.
Gosh, yeah.
Are like a dream come true. I've wanted toys of those for probably since I saw the movie for the first time. So I'm super stoked about those as well. There's a lot of great stuff out there right now. I know Mezco's coming out with a line of, I think 3 3/4, 4-inch scale characters from Scooby-Doo pretty soon. And that cartoon is near and dear to my heart as well. And any line that really kind of dives into all the various monsters of the week, which it looks like they're doing, is going to be a must buy for me too. So yeah, there's almost too much stuff out there. You kind of have to be a little choosy. Otherwise you're going to run out of space, and Lord knows I run into that problem myself.
Yeah. I really want to pick up the Halloween 2 Dr. Loomis figure from NECA, just so I can look at it and be like, I shot him 6 times. Like just
The evil is gone.
Field.
Gosh, the great voice of the 1980s horror movies. Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, I know we got a little bit into Ghostbusters. Anything else that you're like really looking forward to seeing that's coming out in theaters?
Oof. Gosh, I know I just saw something recently that was just like, oh, that looks pretty great. Did you guys see The Lighthouse?
The Lighthouse. I know.
that
with
came
Robert
out.
Pattinson.
Yeah, that came out towards the end of last year, from A24, right? And it is this weird, bizarre, Lovecraftian sort of tale that is just done pitch perfect, and it's probably one of my favorite movies that came out last year. So definitely check that out. But on the new stuff coming out soon, and sticking with A24, I'm pretty stoked for Quiet Place 2.
I'm interested on where they're going to take that storyline.
Yeah,
and I love that John Krasinski is back and is a huge part of it. Just being a fan of The Office, I kind of root for him. Good old Jim Halpert. But yeah, The Lighthouse. That's a movie I want to see. Honey Boy is a movie I really want to see. You probably have more access to that being in LA, but yeah,
we are definitely
here for like a day or two.
There are so many great theaters out here that do the limited screenings. There's the Alamo Draft House downtown. The Egyptian Theater over in Hollywood is constantly doing incredible programming. The Beyond Fest they do each year always has just outstanding stuff, just old and new kind of like limited release stuff. So if you're a movie fanatic, there are worse cities to be in than Los Angeles.
Yeah, for sure. Are you excited at all about Top Gun Maverick?
In a very kind of like, I'm not going into it expecting to have my mind blown, but I'm joyously curious to see what they do.
Yeah, I thought the trailer was okay. I'm not a Tom Cruise guy. I'm sure he's super nice, but I'm just like past like Jerry Maguire, I'm kind of off the Tom Cruise wagon.
It was pretty fantastic in Edge of Tomorrow.
I kind of passed on that one.
You should go check it out.
Oh, you missed out, dog.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people were just like, nah, this just looks like a generic Tom Cruise sci-fi movie, but it is.
Yeah.
I don't want to say subversive, but kind of. I mean, it definitely kind of like defies your preconceived conventions of what that movie is going to be and what his character generally is. And I feel like without giving away too much, it almost plays with that preconceived notion of what a Tom character in a sci-fi action movie is going to be, and then goes in a different direction. But yeah, it's a really fun movie.
He's perfectly cast in it, and if I'm not mistaken, it's based on a graphic novel.
It's based off a manga, I believe.
Manga, there we go. And the whole concept is what happens when your character in a video game dies and you restart.
Right.
And I think that was the thesis behind the original premise. So like that alone is just fantastically interesting. And Tom Cruise, which I do enjoy. Kyle, you're stupid and I hate you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Bring back Tom Cruise and Magnolia. So good.
No, and again, I'm not saying he's not fantastic. He is. He's not my cup of tea.
I'll say. Tickle the pickle.
Are either of you guys Bond guys? Are you excited about the last?
I am.
Bond. Okay.
Yeah, I grew up watching Bond with my dad. So
who's your Bond of choice?
Gosh, I really like Daniel Craig. But Pierce Brosnan was good too.
Pierce Brosnan was good. I mean,
but yeah,
The Other Day was probably the worst one they've ever made, but for the most of his run, he was good.
Yeah, but I'd have to go. JD does a great Sean Connery, but yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Connery.
Sean Connery is a fantastic actor.
Yeah, I would say either Craig or Connery are my 1 and 1As. I always remember. I think it was TBS used to always do the 1 week of Bond movies back in the day, and that was always must watch television for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time here tonight. This has been really fun, just talking some toys and movies with you here, Rich. But go ahead, plug your social media. How can people follow you and keep up with what's going on with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me. I mean, I'm sure we could probably nerd out for like another 3 hours. So if you guys want to do a sequel, let me know, and I'll make sure I clear time on my schedule. If you want to find me on Instagram, my handle is Dean_Cameron, Camearon. You can find me on Twitter at Richard Mayerik, and at Facebook at the same name. And please keep in tune to what we're going to do over here at Nacelle this year, because it's going to be some really good stuff that I think everyone's going to really enjoy.
Fantastic.
All right, JD with this Sean Connery. So at the end of every interview, we always ask our guests 4 questions, really basic, just get to know you a little bit better. Let's start with, what's the first job you ever had?
The first job I ever had was I was a lifeguard at Portage High School during the open swim, where it would normally consist of monitoring senior citizens during aquasize class, and then making sure like 5-year-olds didn't drown during open swim. I think my most impressive save was having to walk to the side of the pool and scoop a kid out because he had swallowed a little too much water. So it was not Baywatch. It was not, but it was still my first job. And then around that same time, I also helped my friend Joe Ponica's grandpa out at the Crown Theater, because that was the family business for them. So lifeguard and popcorn slinger at a movie theater were my first 2 jobs.
I've been there.
There you go. Okay. What was the first car you ever owned?
It was a 1992 Chevy Lumina. It was like piss beige, interior and exterior. I bought it for $500 off my great aunt. And I had that car for probably like 6 years. And I knew as soon as I got it that I had to infuse it with some character. I was also in high school. So the entire back window was pretty much laden with like band and cartoon stickers. And then on the inside, like, because this was very much when I was in my like, I'm a punk rocker, I have a work jacket with like patches, like safety pinned on. So the entire ceiling of my car was just patches and stickers and stuff like that. But yeah, I loved the hell out of that car, and I pretty much rode it until the wheels fell off. It wasn't the wheels. It was like, I think it was my transmission, but
Hey, I had a Chevy. It was my first car, a Chevy S10.
There you go.
Transmission dropped like a motherfucker.
Yeah, that's great. What was the last song you listened to?
Oh, the last song. I think it was something by Beach Fossils, because I've been listening to them a lot the last week or so. They kind of popped up on my Spotify like a few days ago. I was like, oh yeah, we're really digging this band. I think maybe it was Sugar by Beach Fossils, which is a great song.
Gonna check that out for sure. Okay, and then this is probably the most important one.
Ooh, okay.
Who is your Batman?
Oh, who is my Batman? Well, that's a very open-ended question. Are we talking about, who is my preferred scribe of Batman comics, cinematically, television? It's just what are the parameters of this question?
Let's stick with the movies.
Okay.
Let's go feature films.
Feature films. Oh man. I think I'm going to say, I don't know if this is a cheat or a cop out. I want to say Keaton as Bruce Wayne and Affleck as Batman.
Oh, yes. That's an interesting one.
Because there's a difference between Bruce Wayne and Batman. I've been trying to tell Kyle this for years. Mm-hmm. It's not as simple as who's your favorite Batman.
Right.
It's who is Bruce Wayne, which in my opinion, Val Kilmer.
Ooh. I think with a better script, Val Kilmer would have done great on both sides. Agreed. As Bruce and Batman. I think had Tim Burton been allowed to stick around and make the movie that he wanted to, Kilmer would have been awesome. But I mean, there's only so much you can do with a redux of the Adam West Batman, which is fine in its own right, but not for what we'd been accustomed to for the first 2 movies.
We were groomed for something else.
Yeah.
I think for Keaton, I think he captures like the duality and the neuroses and like kind of just like the weirdness that a Bruce Wayne would most assuredly be if one were to meet that person. And then I think Affleck's Batman is kind of the purest thing in my mind to something that was kind of ripped off the pages, as far as like when I'm reading a Batman comic and he's, you know, slugging it out with some bad guys. Like that scene in that warehouse when he goes to rescue Martha is awesome.
Okay.
I like that.
Some love for Affleck. That's the first.
And I think,
So
for the
I love
record,
it.
I think that Pattinson is going to do phenomenal. And I think anyone who's just like kind of wringing their hands and pulling their hair out has to remember that this is all like, it's like a record skipping where we had people who all the way back to Tim Burton's Batman were kind of bitching and moaning that Michael Keaton is Mr. Mom and the guy from the Dream Team and how the heck is he ever play Batman? And then it happened again with Ledger and Joker and like, oh no, not the Brokeback Mountain Cowboy. What are you talking about? You know, the first, or what was the Night movie that he was in, or 10 Things I Hate About You? Like all this short-sighted, just horrible nonsense that the worst that the internet has to offer was being thrown in Ledger's way. And then they saw the first trailer and they're just like, oh, I guess it may be okay. But yeah, it's the same thing going on right now with Robert Pattinson, where they're just like, not the sparkly vampire. It's just like, yeah, not the movie that this poor guy did 12 years ago, let alone, you know, like just ignoring everything he's done since then. Like it's bad. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I think he's going to be great. I'm really curious to see the kind of world building that they're already planning on doing with this first movie is really intriguing. And I think if done the right way and they don't spread themselves too thin right away, it's going to be possibly the new benchmark for a Batman movie. So we'll see.
I couldn't agree more. And I've been arguing with people about Robert Pattinson for a while now. I'm like, have you only seen him in Twilight? Like, he's a really good actor.
Watch Pusher, like watch something else that he's been in.
So Kyle, you admit that you have seen Twilight is what I'm getting out of this.
We went through this. I went with my wife. I was first to go. I didn't read the books. So no, I loved him in a bunch of different things. Map to the Stars, Water Tip for Elephants wasn't as a hit, but yeah, like lately he's been just knocking them out of the park one after another. And he's been doing some like really gritty stuff too. And I'm like, he's perfect for this. He's definitely has the look. So yeah, I'm excited about that. That's a great answer. So awesome, man. Well, hey, again, thank you for coming on the show. You guys follow him again, Dean_Cameron on Instagram, Twitter, Rich_Mayerik, and support his projects. Go out and stream Netflix. All 3 seasons are up there right now. And yeah, give him some support. But again, hey, Rich, thank you for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, fellas. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Fantastic. Shia LaBeouf is Robin.